Know your role. Don't get comfortable. They never imagined you were the standard. Now watch who's begging to be seen. Stay with us. They silenced her without realizing one thing. Her absence would expose everything they depended on. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. Have you ever rewritten your own story? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Black Stories Untold with love, and ring that notification bell for more heartwarming stories that celebrate strength. The crowd rose to its feet before Rick Martin even lifted his stick. The arena breathed his name in waves of sound that shook the ice beneath him. Lights flared. Cameras chased his face. Children pressed homemade signs against the glass, eyes wide with belief. To the world, he was proof that talent and discipline could turn a boy into a legend. To the league, he was the man everyone measured themselves against. To himself, he was a question he had never learned how to answer. Rick stood tall at center ice, broad shoulders filling the jersey like it had been stitched onto him by fate itself. His face was familiar in every city. Clean lines, calm eyes, a smile that appeared at the right moments and disappeared just as easily. He knew how to carry success. He had been taught early that strength was silent and weakness was something to bury deep. He learned to take hits without flinching and praise without believing it too much. Applause was constant. Meaning was not. After the game, the noise followed him into the tunnels, then faded as the doors closed behind him. The locker room smelled of sweat and metal and old victories. Teammates laughed too loudly. Trainers moved with practiced efficiency. Rick sat on the bench and unlaced his skates slowly, feeling the familiar emptiness settle in his chest. Winning always felt like relief rather than joy. Another night survived. Another performance completed. Outside the arena, his life waited exactly as it always did. The house on the hill, the quiet driveway, the silence that greeted him like a loyal companion. Rick lived in a place designed to impress people who never stayed long enough to know him. Clean lines, expensive furniture, windows that reflected the city lights but never let them in. It was a home built for display, not comfort. Someone had already been there before him. The floors gleamed. The air smelled faintly of citrus and soap. Everything was in its proper place, as if the house itself had taken a deep breath and settled. Rick noticed these things without fully seeing them. He never asked who made his life run smoothly. He never needed to. The system worked. That was enough. In the kitchen, a light still glowed. Rick paused in the doorway. Belle Walker stood at the counter, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her posture relaxed, but precise. Her dark skin caught the light softly, not demanding attention, but holding it anyway. She moved with intention, as if every gesture mattered even when no one was watching. She did not look startled when she sensed him there. She simply turned, eyes steady, expression unreadable. There was nothing familiar in her tone, nothing submissive, just respect given, not performed. He noticed then that she looked tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixed, but the kind that came from carrying more than was visible. Rick walked past her, the space between them charged with something neither of them named. He felt it and dismissed it, as he dismissed most things that asked too much of him. Belle watched him go, her gaze thoughtful, as if she already understood something about him that he had spent years avoiding. Upstairs, Rick stood alone in his bedroom, the roar of the arena replaced by an echoing quiet. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. The face everyone wanted, the life everyone envied, the man everyone believed they knew. Somewhere below, a door closed softly. The house returned to silence. Rick lay down fully clothed, Eyes open, heart heavy for reasons he could not explain. He had trophies, contracts, admiration. What he did not have was rest. What he did not have was the language for the ache growing inside him. And downstairs, Belle Walker stepped into the night carrying her own weight, unaware that the man the world adored had just begun to notice the cost of being untouchable. Belle Walker learned early how to move without sound. She entered the house through the side door every morning, keys quiet in her palm, breath steady, spine straight. The mansion did not greet her, but it recognized her. The floors waited for her steps. The air shifted when she arrived. Dust settled where she would reach it. Disorder held its breath. She worked before the city fully woke, before the world remembered who mattered and who did not. Sunlight slipped through tall windows and landed softly on her skin, catching the warm brown tones others rarely paused to notice. Belle did not rush. She never rushed. Every task was done with intention, not because she was slow, but because she understood something most people did not. Care showed in the details no one thanked you for. Her beauty was not loud. It did not announce itself or beg to be seen. It lived in the quiet confidence of her posture, in the calm steadiness of her eyes, in the way she listened more than she spoke. Her hair was always neat, pulled back not to hide herself, but to make room for the work ahead. Her hands were strong and graceful, shaped by years of responsibility that had come too early and stayed too long. Belle noticed everything. She noticed the way the house changed moods, depending on who had visited the night before. The lingering cologne of men who laughed too easily. The empty wine glasses that spoke of loneliness dressed as celebration. The faint marks on the walls where framed photographs had once hung and been removed, as if even memories struggled to stay. She noticed Rick Martin long before he noticed her. She noticed the weight in his walk when he came home late, the way his shoulders sagged when the doors closed behind him. She noticed how he avoided mirrors when he thought no one was looking, how silence followed him like a shadow he could not outrun. Belle never asked questions. She understood that some truths needed time, not interrogation. To the world outside those walls, Rick Martin was a hero carved from ice and applause. To Belle, he was a man hollowed by expectation. She saw the gap between who he was celebrated as and who he was allowed to be. She recognized that gap because she lived inside one of her own. Belle had learned to be invisible not because she lacked presence, but because visibility came with a price she could not always afford. People saw her uniform before they saw her face. They heard her voice only when it served them. They assumed simplicity where there was depth, silence where there was restraint. Yet the house depended on her. It breathed because she opened the windows. It rested because she smoothed the chaos left behind. It functioned because she understood its rhythms the way a heart understands blood. Without Belle, the mansion would have been nothing more than an expensive shell, echoing with emptiness. Sometimes she paused at the top of the stairs, listening to the house settle at night. Sometimes she stood in the kitchen long after her work was done, hands wrapped around a mug that warmed more than her fingers. In those moments, she allowed herself to feel the weight she carried, the kind that bent your spine if you let it, the kind she refused to let break her. Belle Walker did not belong to that world, but she was the reason it worked. She left each night the same way she arrived, quietly, whole, untouched by the illusion of importance that filled those rooms. She carried her dignity with her like armor polished by patience and pain. She did not know yet that the man everyone wanted to be was beginning to see her. She did not know that her quiet presence would soon disrupt the careful order of his life. For now, she remained unseen by the world that overlooked women like her every day. But the house knew her. And soon, whether he was ready or not, Rick Martin would too. The shift began in pieces so small Rick almost missed them, a cup placed beside him exactly when he needed it, the quiet steadiness of footsteps behind him that never startled, never demanded, the sound of Belle's voice drifting through the house, low and calm, not asking for attention but commanding it anyway. He did not see her all at once. He saw her in fragments, like light breaking through blinds. He noticed her hands first, strong, deliberate, sure of themselves. Hands that folded linen with reverence. Hands that wiped down counters as if the surface deserved respect. Hands that never rushed even when time pressed close. Watching them unsettled him. They carried a confidence that did not seek permission. Rick began lingering in rooms longer than necessary, sitting at the kitchen island long after meals were finished, standing in doorways pretending to check his phone while listening to the rhythm of her movements. He told himself it was nothing, habit, boredom, curiosity, without meaning. But his eyes followed her before his mind caught up. Belle noticed long before he did. She noticed how his presence changed the air when he entered a room. How he moved like someone always braced for impact, even in safety. How his laughter sounded hollow when guests were around and absent when they left. She noticed the way he spoke to others with ease, but grew quiet when the noise faded. Fame had sharpened his smile and dulled everything else. Their exchanges were brief. A greeting, a nod. Words shared only when necessary, yet every interaction carried a weight that lingered after silence returned. Rick felt it in the pause before she answered, in the way she met his eyes without flinching, then looked away first. Belle felt it in the way he hesitated before speaking to her, as if afraid of choosing the wrong tone, the wrong distance. Neither crossed the line that hovered between them. Rick had lived his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Praise, access, reflection. Belle wanted nothing. That absence unsettled him more than desire ever had. He found himself wanting to impress her and not knowing how. There was no performance that fit. Belle saw the loneliness he carried like a second skin. She saw it in the way he returned late and ate standing up, in the way he stared out windows without seeing the view, in the way his shoulders dropped when the house emptied. She recognized it because it mirrored a loneliness she knew well, the kind that came from being seen but never known. Once, their hands brushed as she passed him a plate. The contact was accidental and brief. Skin against skin, warm, real. Rick froze. Belle did not pull away quickly. She simply continued as if nothing had happened. But the air between them changed. Rick felt it settle in his chest like a held breath. Belle felt it tighten her spine, a reminder of boundaries drawn by history and power. After that, Rick became more aware of her presence. Not as background, not as function, as a person occupying space he had never questioned. He began to notice the way she listened fully when others spoke, the way she never interrupted but always understood, the way silence did not make her smaller. Belle noticed his attention and guarded herself. She had learned that noticing could turn dangerous, that kindness could be mistaken for invitation, that curiosity could become entitlement. She kept her distance without coldness. She held herself steady without softness. Dignity was not armor she removed easily. At night, Rick lay awake replaying moments that meant nothing and everything. The sound of her footsteps fading down the hall. The faint scent of citrus left behind after she cleaned. The way she carried herself as if she belonged to herself first. Belle left each evening with the sense of being watched and not possessed, seen and not claimed. It confused her more than indifference ever had. Neither spoke of it, but something had begun to lean toward the light. In the margins of their lives, in pauses and glances and unfinished thoughts, a balance shifted. Quietly, inevitably, and neither of them yet understood how much that shift would cost them both. The house began to speak in ways Belle could not ignore. It started with glances held a second too long, conversations that softened when she entered a room and sharpened again when she left. Staff who had once moved alongside her with quiet respect now watched her, as if she were a story forming without permission. Words floated through hallways and settled where they did not belong. People noticed. Friends of Rick's came and went with laughter that rang too loud, eyes that measured too closely. They spoke of games and contracts and women who looked a certain way. They spoke freely when they believed Belle was only background noise. She learned quickly that silence invited assumptions. She learned faster that listening revealed everything. The unspoken rule pressed itself into the air. She is black. She is the help. He is white. He is adored. He is untouchable. That rule had existed long before either of them entered that house. It lived in history. It lived in caution passed down through generations. Belle felt it tighten around her ribs whenever Rick stood too close or lingered too long. She had learned to trust instincts forged by survival. Instincts that whispered when attention turned dangerous. Rick felt it too. He noticed how conversations shifted when Belle walked past, how his friends looked at him differently when they caught him watching her. Jokes edged with suggestion, curiosity wrapped in disbelief. He laughed them off at first, reflexively, the way he had learned to deflect anything that asked him to choose a side. But the pressure did not leave. It followed him into rooms, into silences, into the mirror where his reflection began to feel unfamiliar. Reputation had always been his armor. It protected him from consequence. It kept the world simple. Now it felt like a trap closing around his chest. One night, someone said her name with a tone that did not belong to them. Rick felt the word land wrong, felt heat rise in his spine. He corrected them quickly, sharply, surprising himself with the force of it. The room went still. Eyes flicked between him and Belle, who stood motionless near the doorway, face composed, heart pounding. She understood then that lines were shifting. Belle did not ask Rick what it meant. She did not ask anyone. She tightened her boundaries instead. She shortened conversations. She made herself smaller without shrinking who she was. Survival had taught her how to disappear in plain sight when necessary. But disappearing came at a cost. At night, she lay awake feeling history breathe down her neck. She thought of women before her who had been mistaken for opportunity instead of person. She knew how easily attention could turn cruel, how quickly desire could rewrite dignity if allowed to run unchecked. Rick sensed her withdrawal and felt it as loss before he understood it as protection. He wanted to say something, to acknowledge the weight pressing between them, to name the unfairness he had never been forced to see. But words felt inadequate, and silence had always been safer for him than confrontation. Until it was not. One afternoon, a visitor spoke carelessly about lines that should not be crossed, about appearances, about knowing one's place. Rick felt something break open in him. He saw Belle across the room, standing tall, eyes distant, carrying herself with a restraint that cut deeper than anger ever could. The rule was clear. He could remain untouched and let the world keep its shape. Or he could see her fully and risk everything that had made his life comfortable. Belle felt the choice forming before he did. She knew how this story usually ended. She had lived it in echoes and warnings. She prepared herself for distance, for disappointment, for the moment when he would choose safety over truth. Rick stood still, reputation pressing hard against his ribs. The house held its breath. The lines had been drawn long before either of them arrived, but now they waited to see who would cross them first. The party was meant to be harmless. Music pulsed through the house, laughter spilling into corners that usually held silence. Rick's friends filled the rooms with confidence and noise, with stories sharpened for performance. Glasses clinked, lights dimmed. The house became a stage again, and Rick slipped into the version of himself that knew how to survive applause. Belle stayed where she always did during nights like this. Present but peripheral, moving through the edges with practiced calm. She carried trays, collected empties, smoothed chaos without interrupting it. Her face was neutral, her posture composed, her mind alert to shifts in tone. She heard the comment before she realized it was about her. Rick stood near the kitchen island, relaxed in a way she had never seen him around her. Someone asked a careless question. Someone laughed, and Rick answered without thinking, without pausing long enough to hear himself. He spoke about women like her as if they were categories instead of people, as if they existed outside desire, outside worth, outside the kind of future he imagined for himself. The words were not shouted. They did not need to be. They landed clean and sharp and undeniable. Belle froze. The room did not stop moving. Music played on, laughter followed. No one noticed the way her chest tightened or the way the air seemed to thin around her. She did not feel anger. Anger required surprise. This felt older than that. Heavier. Disappointment settled in her body like a slow ache. She had known this possibility lived somewhere beneath his attention. She finished her task with steady hands and left the room quietly. Dignity demanded exit, not spectacle. But the words followed her, pressing against memories she had spent a lifetime managing. Women like her, always almost human, always almost worthy. Rick felt it moments later. Not the weight of what he had said, but the absence that followed it. He noticed Belle was gone, not because the room needed her, but because something essential had shifted. The noise suddenly felt hollow, the laughter thin. His words replayed themselves with cruel clarity. He excused himself, without explanation. Rick found her in the back hallway near the side door, coat already in her hands. She stood straight, face calm, eyes distant. The look on her face stopped him cold. Not fury, not tears. Something worse. Recognition. She had seen him clearly and chosen to step away. Rick spoke her name and felt it crack in his throat. Belle turned slowly. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She did not soften herself for his comfort. She simply met his eyes and waited. Silence stretched between them until it became unbearable. He tried to explain, tried to soften the words, tried to reach for intention instead of impact. Each sentence felt smaller than the last. Belle listened without interrupting, without reacting. That restraint was the sharpest rebuke of all. When she spoke, her voice was steady. She told him she was not surprised. She told him disappointment hurt more than insult. She told him that seeing someone notice you without valuing you was a specific kind of erasure. One she knew too well. Rick felt something collapse inside him. He saw suddenly what she had been to him. Not background, not function. She had seen him without the jersey, without the noise, without the myth. She had noticed his emptiness and never tried to fill it for him. And he had reduced her to a type without realizing she was the only person in that house who had ever truly seen him. The truth broke open between them. Belle did not wait for his apology to finish. She stepped past him toward the door. Her choice was clear. Distance was no longer protection. It was necessity. Rick stood alone in the hallway as the door closed softly behind her. The party roared on somewhere behind him. But the man everyone admired had just lost the one person who mattered. And for the first time in his life, the silence hurt more than the noise. Belle Walker did not disappear. She simply stepped back. The next morning, the house felt different. Not emptier, but quieter, in a way that exposed everything. Belle moved through her work with the same precision, the same calm, but something essential had shifted. She no longer lingered, no longer softened the air with her presence. She did what was required and nothing more. Distance was not punishment. It was protection. She understood the cost of staying too close after being seen too clearly. She had learned long ago that dignity sometimes meant retreat, not because you were wrong, but because remaining available invited harm. She did not owe him understanding. She did not owe him patience. She owed herself peace. Rick noticed immediately. He noticed because the house no longer breathed the same way. He noticed because silence now carried accusation instead of comfort. He noticed because every room reminded him of the words he could not take back. He saw Belle only in passing, a nod, a quiet acknowledgement. No warmth, no invitation. It was unbearable. For the first time in his life, Rick felt exposed without being attacked. No headlines, no public outrage, just the steady weight of knowing he had failed someone who had never asked anything from him. He replayed the night again and again, each time hearing his own voice more clearly. He recognized the casual cruelty embedded in it, the privilege of speaking without consequence. Fame did not help him now. It offered no shield against shame, no distraction strong enough to drown out the truth. His achievements felt flimsy, his success suddenly loud and shallow. He had been celebrated for years and never questioned why. Now he understood what that kind of unearned insulation had cost him. Rick began to unravel quietly. He avoided friends, avoided invitations, avoided mirrors. He lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments where he could have listened instead of spoken, where he could have paused instead of performed. Belle had seen something better in him once. That realization cut deeper than any insult ever could. Belle watched from a distance. She refused to cross. She saw his withdrawal, his restlessness, his confusion. She did not interpret it as progress or promise. She had learned the danger of mistaking discomfort for transformation. Change, she knew, was not loud. It was consistent. It required action without audience. Still, she felt the weight of what had been broken. Not because she missed him, but because she mourned the version of him she thought might exist. The man she had glimpsed in quiet moments. The one who listened, the one who noticed, letting go of potential hurt in a way that felt familiar and unfair. Rick began to ask questions he had never needed to before, not about public relations, not about damage control, about himself, about where his ideas had come from, about why silence had always felt safer than accountability, about the systems that had protected him from consequence while demanding nothing in return. He started small, listening more than speaking, correcting people when they made careless jokes, feeling the discomfort of being the only one in the room to push back. Each moment stripped something false from him. Each moment left him more exposed and more honest. For the first time, Rick wanted to change without being seen doing it. Not to be forgiven, not to be admired, but because the man he had been no longer fit inside his own skin. Because Belle had held up a mirror and walked away, refusing to carry his reckoning for him. Distance became a lesson. Belle chose herself. Rick faced himself. And somewhere between restraint and remorse, something real began to take shape. Change did not arrive with ceremony. It crept in quietly, unwitnessed, uncelebrated. Rick Martin stopped filling his days with noise. He stopped reaching for distraction when discomfort surfaced. He sat with it instead. Let it burn. Let it teach. He began by listening. Not the polite listening that waited for a turn to speak, but the kind that absorbed and unsettled. When teammates made jokes that once slid past unchecked, he no longer laughed. When friends spoke about women like Belle as abstractions, he interrupted, not angrily, not performatively, simply clearly. The room often went quiet. The silence no longer frightened him. Some people pulled away. Rick felt the loss sharply. These were the men who had celebrated his victories, who had shared his tables and his excess. But he noticed something else, too. The ease he had once felt around them had always been borrowed, conditional. He had been playing a part, even there. He started looking backward, at the lessons he had absorbed without questioning, at the praise that came easier than understanding, at the moments when he had chosen comfort over courage. He remembered coaches who praised toughness and mocked softness, family dinners where no one spoke about what hurt. He saw how those silences had shaped him. Rick did not announce his reckoning. There were no public apologies, no speeches, no attempts to repair his image. He worked privately, reading, listening, sitting in rooms where he was no longer the most important person, feeling the unfamiliar weight of humility settle into his bones. It was exhausting. Some nights he returned home hollowed out by self-awareness. The house felt larger now, less forgiving. Belle moved through it with the same dignity she always had, professional, reserved, present without invitation. She watched without hope or expectation. Belle had seen men unravel before. She had seen promises bloom in guilt and wither in convenience. She did not need to be convinced. She needed proof, not once, not loudly, over time. She noticed the changes anyway, the way Rick corrected others even when it cost him approval, the way he listened without rushing to explain himself, the way he accepted discomfort instead of fleeing it. These moments registered not as redemption, but as possibility. Still, she kept her distance. She refused to become his measure of progress. She refused to be the finish line he ran toward for validation. Belle knew too well the danger of becoming someone else's lesson. She would not sacrifice her dignity to ease his transformation. Rick respected that boundary more than he had respected anything in his life. He did not ask for forgiveness, did not seek reassurance. He let the silence stand, let it remind him that change was not transactional. That trust could not be negotiated. Days turned into weeks. Consistency replaced urgency. Rick showed up differently, not perfectly, but honestly. He stumbled, he corrected, he stayed present. The work did not make him lighter, it made him real. Belle saw the pattern form, not grand gestures, not apologies repeated until they lost meaning, just alignment between words and actions. Again, and again, and again. That repetition mattered. For the first time, Belle felt something unfamiliar stir beneath her restraint. Not hope. Not longing. Recognition. She saw a man learning to carry his weight instead of placing it on others. Rick began to understand something essential. Becoming different was not about erasing the past. It was about standing in its shadow without flinching. It was about choosing integrity when no one was watching. It was about letting the people you hurt decide if you ever deserved proximity again. He did not know if Belle would ever step closer. He worked anyway, and in that quiet commitment, something stronger than regret took root. The world did not wait for permission to intrude. It never did. The rumors arrived first as whispers, a photograph caught at the wrong angle, a comment passed between fans, a suggestion wrapped in curiosity and sharpened by entitlement. Rick noticed the shift online before it reached the house. Headlines that pretended to ask questions while already deciding the answers. A narrative forming without consent. Belle felt it in the way strangers looked at her. Eyes lingered too long. Smiles tightened. People spoke her name with assumptions attached. She became a story stripped of context, a symbol flattened by speculation. To some, she was an opportunist, to others an inconvenience. Rarely was she treated as a woman who had simply existed with dignity. She had not asked for attention. She had not invited scrutiny. Still, it found her. Rick watched it unfold with growing horror. The same fame that had once cushioned him now became a weapon aimed outward. He recognized the pattern instantly. The world protected men like him while dissecting women like Belle. He had benefited from that imbalance for years. Now he was forced to see it clearly. His team urged caution. Statements were drafted, strategies proposed, silence recommended. They spoke about optics and timing and control. They spoke about protecting the brand. Rick listened and felt something harden inside him. The brand suddenly felt irrelevant. Belle did not ask him to intervene. She carried herself as she always had, calm, composed, refusing to shrink or perform pain for sympathy. But Rick saw the toll it took, the weight she bore quietly, the way history pressed itself into the present again. He knew this moment mattered, not as proof, not as spectacle, as choice. Rick stepped forward without warning. No script, no spin, no rehearsal. He stood publicly and spoke simply. He named the lies. He rejected the narratives. He defended Belle without centering himself. He did not soften his words for comfort. He did not hedge. He did not perform remorse. He spoke with clarity and conviction and let the truth stand on its own. The reaction was immediate. Some applauded. Others recoiled. Sponsors called. Friends questioned. The safety he had lived inside for years cracked open. Rick felt the cost land in real time. He accepted it without flinching. For the first time, he chose her openly, not as an act of redemption, not as a gesture, as alignment. Belle watched from a distance she still held carefully. She had seen men speak boldly before and disappear quietly after. Words could be brave. They could also be temporary. She did not rush to gratitude. She observed. Rick did not retreat when the backlash intensified. He stayed present. He repeated himself. He refused to allow Belle to be reduced to an explanation for his growth. He corrected people who praised him while blaming her. He redirected attention back to where it belonged. It was not about him. The world pushed back hard. And Rick did not fold. Belle felt something shift. Not trust yet, but recognition. She saw a man willing to lose comfort rather than sacrifice her dignity. She saw consistency under pressure. She saw action without audience-seeking applause. That mattered. The scrutiny did not disappear, but it changed shape. The narrative faltered. The certainty fractured. Belle remained herself. Rick remained beside her without stepping into her space. When the noise finally dimmed, something remained. A truth tested by consequence, a choice made without performance. And for the first time, the world had tried to take something from Belle and failed, because someone had finally chosen to stand where it counted. With her, they met without witnesses, no crowd, no cameras, no house holding its breath around them, just two people standing in the quiet where nothing needed to be proved. The space between them felt different now, lighter, honest. Rick did not reach for her. He stood with his hands still, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady. He had learned that presence mattered more than urgency. That restraint could speak louder than desire. Belle noticed immediately. The absence of expectation felt like respect. They spoke carefully, not to impress, not to repair, to understand. Rick did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask for reassurance. He spoke about his past without defending it, about what he had learned and what still unsettled him. He admitted fear without disguising it as confidence. Belle listened the way she always had, fully, without interruption. When she spoke, her words were measured and clear. She did not demand perfection. She did not promise ease. She named her boundaries without apology. She spoke of trust as something built slowly or not at all. There was no illusion between them. They did not pretend love erased harm. They did not pretend intention outweighed impact. They acknowledged the imbalance that had shaped their first encounters and refused to ignore it now. That honesty anchored them. What grew did not rush. It unfolded in small gestures and consistent choices. Rick arrived when he said he would. He listened when Belle spoke. He corrected himself without asking to be praised. Belle allowed him closer one moment at a time, not because he pushed, because he waited. They learned each other in pieces. The sound of breath held before speaking, the way silence felt shared instead of empty, the comfort of being seen without being consumed. Each interaction added weight to something fragile and real. Love, for them, did not arrive as escape. It did not distract from the world or soften its edges. It asked them to remain present inside it, to choose courage over comfort, to stay accountable even when affection made it tempting to relax. Rick understood something new. Love was not about being chosen despite flaws. It was about becoming someone worthy of choosing. That work did not end when Belle stepped closer. It began there. Belle understood too. Love did not require her to carry someone else's becoming. She was not responsible for shaping him. She was allowed to desire without instruction, to receive without debt. Their connection grew slowly, not marked by declarations, but by consistency, not defined by intensity, but by care. They did not rush to label what they were becoming. They allowed space for uncertainty to coexist with affection. In that space, something steady formed. They walked side by side without leaning, shared silence without anxiety. Laughter came easily now. So did truth. When conflict surfaced, they faced it directly. No retreat, no performance, just honesty grounded in respect. The world still watched. It always would. But the gaze no longer dictated their pace. They had learned that love built under scrutiny had to be rooted deeper to survive. What they chose was not simple. It required patience. It required humility. It required letting go of fantasy and standing in reality together. But it was real. And in that reality, love stopped being an illusion. It became an act of courage, chosen daily, without escape. The noise faded slowly, not all at once, not dramatically. It loosened its grip as Rick learned how to live without it. He no longer chased the roar of crowds or the comfort of being untouchable. He traded the echo of applause for something quieter and heavier. Accountability, truth, the steady discipline of becoming someone who did not need a spotlight to know who he was. Rick Martin learned how to stand still. He listened more than he spoke. He chose his words with care. He apologized when he was wrong and did not expect forgiveness to follow. His life narrowed in ways that felt like relief rather than loss. Fewer rooms, fewer people, fewer illusions. What remained mattered. Belle watched him change without managing it. She stood fully in herself now, no longer measuring her presence to fit someone else's comfort, no longer translating her worth into something easier to accept. She moved through the world with a confidence that did not ask permission. Her power was not new. It was finally uncontained. She did not forget what had been done. She did not need to. Their love did not require amnesia. It required honesty. They spoke openly about the past, about harm, about fear, about the weight they both carried differently. Rick never rushed her through memory. Belle never softened truth to spare his feelings. That mutual courage became the foundation. Together they built a life that looked simple from the outside, mornings without hurry, evenings that held conversation instead of distraction, a home that felt lived in rather than displayed. Rick learned how to be present without proving. Belle learned how to receive without guarding. They chose each other daily, not as escape, not as reward, as commitment. Rick knew now that love did not redeem him. It reflected him. It held him accountable. It demanded consistency, and he welcomed that demand because it kept him honest. Belle knew now that love did not ask her to shrink. It did not require compromise of self. It honored her history instead of erasing it. She carried her past with pride and allowed it to inform her future without defining it. The world still watched them, some with admiration, some with skepticism, some with resentment. They let it exist without engaging it. They had learned that dignity did not require defense. Rick became a man who stood firm without dominance. Belle remained the woman she had always been, whole, clear, unmoved by smallness. When they walked together, it was without hierarchy, without apology, without performance. Two people aligned in truth rather than fantasy. Their story did not end with fireworks. It ended with clarity. With a man who learned how to carry his power responsibly, with a woman who refused to be unseen, with a love that honored history rather than denying it, a love that required work, that required courage, that chose dignity over ease, not a fairy tale, something rarer, a future built slowly, intentionally, together. Before you go, hold this story for someone else. Someone you love may feel unseen, unheard, and alone. Share this video and let them know their triumph is still unfolding. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, drop a comment, and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe to Black Stories Untold for more stories that uncover hidden struggles, celebrate strength, and remind us that every voice matters.